So thank you very much for giving up your lunchtime. So just to introduce yourself, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Dominic Ridley-Moy, and I run the Behaviour Change Network. So these webinars are all about bringing behavioural science and the theory behind behavioural science to life with practical examples. So very excited to have Nesta here this lunchtime to talk about what they found around saving money and boilers. So it's going to be really interesting for me, certainly, to hear about the science behind it, but also how they've used the COM-B model and use model to really bring it to life, use the behavioural science and think through those challenges to turn it into a campaign. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Ella White, who is the Director of Communications for Nesta and for the Behavioural Insights team as well. And we'll also be hearing later from Elin, who is Nesta's Campaign Manager. So I will hand over to you to take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting us, Dominic. So we've got some slides to show you which we're going to talk through. And as you know, we'll be talking about our approach taking research findings into people's homes via a creative communications campaign. And crucially, as per the title of this webinar, how we applied elements of behaviour science to prompt action. So before we go into that, just to give you 2 minutes on who we are. So we work for an innovation charity called Nesta. We are crammed with teams of behaviour scientists, data analysts, designers, and we work together to solve what we call as one of the world's greatest challenges. So at the moment we have 3 missions. One is around healthy life, which is about reducing obesity. Another one is called Fairer Start, about reducing inequality. And the third one, topic of why we're here today, is sustainable future. So that sustainable future mission is focused on decarbonisation, and sort of primarily that of our homes. So why is that important? Because the residential sector is the 3rd largest producer of greenhouse gas emissions after transport and business. So homes are directly responsible for creating around 70 million tonnes of CO2 annually. So if we change the way we heat our homes, that's one of the most impactful things we can do to cut pollution. So Nesta is working to make it easier for people to use clean, green sources of energy to heat and power their homes. So that mission works on lots of projects at any one time. And one of those projects, which is the kind of core and basis of the campaign we've come to talk to you about today, is one that started back in 2021. And it was investigating the issue of boiler flow temperatures. Now, this is, I promise you, the only boring boiler technical part of this presentation, and it won't take long, but it just want to explain what a boiler flow temperature is, because I'd certainly never heard of it before 2021. So the flow temperature is the temperature that the boiler heats water up to before it goes around the radiators in your home. So it's different from the thermostat, if you like. Changing the flow temperature on a combi boiler doesn't affect the temperature of the hot water in your taps and showers. So most combi boilers, if you've got one, are set up with a flow temperature of 80 degrees, but actually at 60 degrees, the boiler condenses more efficiently, so it's better for the boiler to be lower. So this particular piece of research we were doing was trying to understand what the impact of lowering that flow temperature would be on the home, and testing whether or not we could save energy and also money off energy bills by changing those flow temperatures while keeping the houses to a comfortable temperature. Clearly, people don't want to be cold. So that's a research that's really rooted in science, and we did a piece of research at what's called the Salford Energy House team. There's a little picture of it there. So this is a testing lab, which is a traditional early 20th century 2-bedroom terraced house, and it exists in an environmental chamber. So you can test sort of different impacts on temperature in Salford Energy House. So for example, we tested in the house impacts of changing the boiler flow temperature, and outside of the house there was an outdoor temperature of 4.5 degrees C, which simulates the average UK winter temperature. So you can really see and test the impact of some of these changes you're trying to make. And the research revealed that of the 15 million condensing combi boilers in the UK, if we optimise them by turning down their flow temperature, that would generate a gas saving of between 6 and 8%. And crucially, so the potential sort of per household saving by doing this action was around £112 a year off energy bills and 173 kilograms of carbon reduced, wouldn't go in the atmosphere that otherwise would. So the other really important kind of finding that we had was that only 1 in 10 households had changed their boiler flow temperature. So there we are. We know that this is an action that very people do know about. We knew that if they took the action, they would be saving themselves money and they would also be reducing their carbon emissions. So win, 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 win. So we had this really important kind of customer-facing message to deliver, and we also delivered. So we wanted people to take the action, and we wanted people to help people take the action by developing an online tool to show people how to make the change. But there were some challenges in how we did it, which is where behaviour science and the communications campaign comes in. So we used a model called COM-B to understand some of the sticking points that would stop people taking this action. Now, COM-B, if you don't know, is a behaviour science framework that cites sort of capability, opportunity, and motivation as the 3 factors which are capable of changing behaviour. So applying that model to our kind of communications challenge, capability. So people were unsure of how to take the action. I don't know about you, but I barely ever touch my boiler, let alone know what the boiler flow is. So people didn't really know how to do it, and they were certainly nervous about breaking it. So things that you might do to address that are things like instructional videos and emphasising how easy the action is to take. The second part of COM-B is opportunity. So clearly you can't take the action kind of if you're looking at your phone on the bus or if you're in the office. You have to be next to your boiler, i.e. at home. So that means that if you're thinking about campaign messaging, then clearly we're selecting channels that are most likely to reach people at home when they can actually do something about it. And then the third one is about motivation. So we tested, obviously, there's 2 big sort of benefits of taking this action, saving money and saving carbon. Both were important. When we tested, particularly in the context of last year, I'm sure you remember a lot of worry about energy bills. We found that our audience was motivated by the saving money action primarily. So we always included that in our messaging. So that's a kind of example of how we used COM-B. Quite a lot of challenges in this campaign then, and we've sort of talked about some of these already. So getting people to take action is quite hard. It's quite technical, dry advice to turn your boiler down. It's not interesting stuff, really. And people were very worried about breaking their boilers. So those 3 first challenges are all related to the COM-B learnings around capability. So number 4, not many people had taken the action. It wasn't well known. Is a lack of social norm. So if other people aren't doing something, one is much less likely to do it. So how do you overcome that in your communications? More on that later. And then 2 other kind of factors that were certainly in our minds when we were planning this campaign that are less about behaviour science and just the reality of trying to do a good communications campaign. Nesta is not a known consumer advice organisation. Like, we aren't public facing. Most of our work is facing out to policymakers and practitioners. So people didn't know who Nesta was, and therefore we'd be far less likely to take notice of any advice we may give them, even if we could reach them. And secondly, of course, you probably remember this yourself, October 22 was a pretty noisy and confusing space for energy and money saving advice. It was flying around everywhere. So in October 22, we launched Money Saving Boiler Challenge to raise awareness of this energy saving measure. And we had an online tool, an 8-step online tool that literally walked people through the whole process of how to do it. So it was a simple action, and we had a tool to make people feel really confident in doing it. And our primary approach was through sort of credible partners and channels. So remembering that we really knew we weren't a consumer-facing organisation, and we knew people would be worried about this. We knew that if we worked through credible partners that are known and trusted by the audience, we would have more sort of chance of cutting through, if you like. We had a lot of no-cost PR, so it was a really good opportunity. There was a lot of attention on in the news agenda last year on energy saving. So we had a lot of success with PR. And we also had some paid for activity. In the later months of the campaign, the kind of early part of January, that flipped around. We did a lot more paid for activity, and we had less kind of no-cost PR and partner work, primarily because attention had shifted. The media landscape had moved on, and so therefore paid for became the major channel. So the EAST framework, this is another sort of behaviour science kind of acronym, really, which gives a very easy to follow outline for how to use behavioural insights to kind of optimise good work. So this EAST framework helped us to think about how we could really refine our campaign creative and message to drive people to take the action we wanted them to do, i.e. turn down their boilers. So EAST is easy, attractive, social and timely. So applied to our context, then easy, well, ease, one of our key messages, as I've explained, and later on as Elin will show, how easy this action to do was kind of a common, was never absent from any of our communications, it was always there. So attractive, we like to think, and you can be your own judge of this, we generated some really nice looking campaign creative, but we also really kind of regularly emphasized the cost saving benefits. So that was the element of attractiveness. That was the main motivation we were tapping into. People also cared about reducing their carbon consumption, but in the context of last year, the money saving element was clearly the one we needed to lead with, and that certainly came out through our testing. So social, thinking about how to apply descriptive norms to our approach. So there's two kind of parts of this really, really using user-generated content in our creative. So as Elin will go on to explain, the most successful creative was absolutely things that showed real people and real boilers. So that sense of other people doing it. So really attacking that social norm that lack of social norm that I talked about earlier. That's one we did it, so lots of user-generated content. And then secondly, publicising the number of boilers turned down. So we called it the Money Saving Boiler Challenge, and we had a timer on the website to show how many people had done it. So we really wanted to give a sense of other people coming in and kind of and performing the action and it being a collective thing. So that was the social. And then timely, mentioned earlier, we reached people in their homes during a period of concern about high energy costs. So people were very much looking for this type of advice, and it was the right time to be connecting with them with that type of message. Wouldn't get as much luck if we did it in the last couple of weeks in the heat wave, for example. So last autumn was the right time for it. Who are our audience? So we did quite a lot of desk research on this and commissioned some media planners to help us think about this and sort of sense check our work. Because obviously, if you just go all boiler owners or everyone that can touch a boiler, it's a big audience. How do you kind of start getting a thinking about how you target? So our research identified two sort of key personas with the highest potential rate of conversion, and we called them money savvy households and struggling households. And you can see from the slide the breakdown of those, and you can see that the research showed that actually it's primarily women in the house that might that we're more likely to kind of take in our information and take action, particularly those 35 plus. We developed a really nice campaign brand, as I mentioned earlier, and tested lots of different creative and messaging approaches. That's where we really honed our focus on the easiness, the cost saving, the fact that other people were doing it. And then by using a social norming frame that I've talked about earlier, we're really amplifying the actions taken by others. So a lot of it was about asking people to tell us they'd done it and then amplifying that. So again, really trying to get a sense of this being an action that was easy to take, would save money, that lots of other people were doing already. So the most effective visuals were those that had real people and pictures of boilers. Who'd have thought it, pictures of boilers doing so well? So people were nervous about doing this. Touching your boiler isn't something you do kind of, sort of every day. So we had, as well as our really simple and easy to follow guide, we had to really think about making it clear that it was so easy. So we're just going to show you a little video now, which was created by one of our marketing team on a Friday afternoon. It's not at all polished. It was posted on TikTok, and it was seen by over 560,000 people. So Elin's going to play the video now, and then I'm going to hand over to Elin to talk a bit more about the campaign and the results we had.
Thanks, Ella. So I hope you can hear me. I've had some internet wobbles, but I'm going to pick up now the rest of the story and hopefully not play the video again. Okay, so as Ella noted earlier, we weren't a known household brand, so we needed partners to help amplify our message to the audience that they already had a relationship with, as well as providing credible endorsement. So building partners was something that we worked really hard at over the 6 months leading up to the campaign, with regular partner briefings to update them on emerging research. And it paid off. We landed 8 high-profile national partnerships with consumer-facing organisations, including energy companies and advice givers. Our partners amplified the campaign on their own channels, with energy companies like EDF, for example, using email and social media to direct customers to the website. We also worked really closely in consultation with the UK government on the development of their Help for Households campaign, which you probably saw on the side of a bus or on a leaflet in Asda's. They ran this campaign to help people during the cost of living crisis. And we advised the government using our evidence on household tips for saving energy. And this led to the Money Saving Boiler Challenge featuring as the top tip for households to save money on their website. And obviously this profile and amplification led to more people using our tool and more people becoming aware about boiler flow more generally. Smart Energy GB, who we were engaged with throughout the campaign, included turning down boiler flow temperature in their national energy saving campaign, which included television adverts. And their content on their website pointed to our online tool to make sure people were following the right steps, which was another great partnership opportunity that we maximised. So in terms of the no-cost activity that we used throughout the campaign, we secured strong media coverage of the campaign since the launch through lots of national broadcast coverage on Channel 4 News, BBC Radio 4 Today's programme, BBC Radio 5 Live, LBC, print nationals and online. We took our spokespeople around the country wherever any opportunity arose to speak with media to give this advice. And between October 2022 and March 2023, the campaign had over 198 media hits. We utilised our own channels to engage sector peers and local interest groups, generating more than 400,000 impressions and 36,000 engagements. So we reached out to 350 stakeholder organisations, from local authorities to housing associations, green groups and energy co-ops, who helped to seed the campaign through their highly engaged channels like Facebook groups and local newsletters. We had an incredible response from these groups and we're really proud to be working with them on reaching people at a local level. Now this one took some work and I don't think there's a quick win or any advice we can give rather than just plug away. But given the profile of money saving expert and Martin Lewis, especially back last autumn, when he was basically God when it came to money saving advice during the energy crisis, but getting support from Martin and MSE was massive. And our campaign was selected to feature on ITV's Martin Lewis Money Show. Every time Martin mentioned us, we saw a huge spike in traffic to our website, as well as when MSE included our tip in their newsletter. Now, this is an example in behaviour science of messenger effect. So people are paying more attention to information that comes from the messenger that they respect, which at the time was very much Martin Lewis. But other people that are respected when it comes to energy advice are the installers and engineers that come into your home and fix or install your boilers. So we knew they were a key audience for the campaign, given their ability to give trusted advice to consumers. So we ran a webinar about the campaign with Installer Magazine, and over 100 installers joined to ask questions and get insight so that they could understand the technology behind it and the science and explain it to their customers. Now, Smart Energy GB invited us to take the campaign to the parliamentary events in Westminster and the Senedd in Wales. This was an opportunity for us to engage with another type of audience, which were MPs and MSs, to share the advice with them so they could include it as part of their constituency work. So it was win-win, as MPs were looking for new advice to support their communities, and they were keen to amplify their message on social. They were always keen to have their photograph taken. And we were always looking for new ways to reach our audience with this advice. So this was a nice additional benefit from the partnership work. So we obviously put money behind this campaign. We couldn't just rely on no cost and partners. We utilised paid media, including Meta and Google adverts, to reach target audience with an instructional creative. During autumn 2022, this was a really effective direct driver of conversions. By January 2023, the media focus on the energy crisis had passed. Partner campaign activity had pretty much ended. So this is when we chose to upweight and invest more in paid media, including social media, paid search, print advertising, and national radio adverts. And this acted as the main route to driving consumer audience to turn down their boilers in the late winter, early spring. So the results of paid for advertising were really strong. Our simplest creative performed really well, and the channels reaching people in their homes where they could take action quickly were obviously utilised. We managed to reach 31 million people across the UK adult population through the paid. And our campaign website registered a really impressive conversion rate. Approximately 18% of tracked web visitors told us that they'd taken the action to turn their boiler flow down. So we commissioned pre, mid and post campaign tracking to understand any behaviour or attitudinal changes through an external campaign tracking agency who surveyed a representative sample of more than 2,000 GB adults in each survey. And there were some really interesting findings around increased awareness, actions and campaign recognition. So this was really valuable to have that survey at the start and at the end to be able to directly compare. But more about that on the next slide. So what was the impact of the campaign? Between October and March, it inspired more than 214,000 uses of the online tool to adjust the flow temperature. We also know that through our radio campaign and ours and others' influence on government and energy companies, the evidence and advice we created reached many more people through other channels, generating a much greater scale of impact. So our commissioned campaign tracking showed that back in early 2022, in October 2022, 21% of people said they've lowered their boiler flow temperature in the past. This rose to 32% of people when we reran the survey in March 2023. We estimate this equates to approximately 3.1 million households turning down their boiler flow temperatures over the course of the campaign, saving an estimate of 500,000 tonnes in CO2 and nearly £300 million in savings for households and 157 million for HM Treasury, because this reduced the spend on the energy price guarantee that the government had put in place. So these figures are based on carbon and cash savings for the past year alone. We believe that continued impact of this work could, over the next 5 to 10 years, save several £billion, depending on gas prices and how many customers revert their boiler settings. So we're doing some more work to understand how long people keep their boiler settings down and whether it's a permanent action or whether it goes back up. But early indications are that generally people keep their boiler flow down, which is really good news. So the results speak for themselves. This was a really informed campaign led by the science, and we worked closely with the behavioural scientists on team. But the campaign is up for 5 national awards in the next few months, and we think that's down to an impact of focused evidence-based research and creative collaboration across Nesta. So that's the campaign in a nutshell. I know that Dominic's going to be sharing our slides with our details so you can get in touch. So I'll stop sharing and then we'll hand over for any questions.
So thank you very much. That was really, really useful, and it was really interesting to hear how you kind of scaled it from the behavioural science into a campaign that clearly made a real difference. So yeah, we will be sharing a recording. We'll also share the slides, and I will make sure that I share your contact details as well if you want to get in touch. So we've got quite a few questions. So I'm going to go through the questions as I see them on the screen. So any tips for gaining user-generated content? And this is from Russell, and he's tried it a few times with mixed success.
Do you want me to pick this up, Ella? Okay, so I think the main thing is that it's when we launched the tool, we had a button on there from day one to share the message with friends and family. So you could click on a button to take you through the step-by-step guide, but you could also click on a button to share it, and you could share it through your own social channels quickly by using the online tool. And also then in our creatives, we created lots of content where people were using it themselves. Staff used it themselves to start that trend. So we got lots of staff boilers on video, which was great because we got big call out for staff to get involved. We also did try influencer marketing. So we did use influencers to share the message with their audiences. These were kind of frugal money household kind of influencers. I think it's fair to say we weren't hugely blown away with the impact based on the analytics that we could see, but that just gave us more opportunities to make this Instagrammable, TikTokable, videoable. And so the prolificness then of our content was generally people taking the action, which was really good. But yeah, it is hard slog to get user generated content.
Definitely. Yeah, because I suppose the measure of the campaign is actually how many people took action, really, which is clearly what you wanted to do. I think you've touched on this already, but we had a question about what did you do to test your messages and creatives? So if there's any more insights you wanted to share around that at all.
You go for that one, Ellen. You did all the work.
Okay, so with this one, it was quite good fun actually. We secured some focus groups with housing association tenants that we were working with through one of our partners, and we shared with them some of the messaging we were proposing and some of the creatives and got their feedback. But we also created a survey, a really quick survey where we inserted some creatives and some messaging and asked questions like, what action would you take if you saw this? What does this make you feel like? What would you do as a result of it? What do you think this is all about? And we shared that with people who'd signed up to be contacted for surveys from Nesta. And that really helped us shape it. Definitely the messaging, without doubt. We really refined it, and some of the images as well. So yeah, a mixture, but you know, just as long as you get eyes on it, I think you can try and be too audience specific sometimes with testing, and if you need to get something out the door, you need eyes on it. I think volume is key.
And I think there's sorry, were you gonna come in there, Ella? Sorry.
Only just to add really that obviously a lot of this was being shared through digital marketing, and the beauty of which you can see straight away which of your creatives are working. So we did quite a lot of looking over those kind of levels of impressions and just making choices about which ones were performing better and which ones were performing worse. And I think certainly as the campaign went on, we ended up doing a lot more of the kind of more rough and ready people messing around with boilers, and probably a bit fewer of the more slick, what we thought kind of looked more professional videos, because they actually weren't landing quite so well. So there's also an element of being quite fleet of foot during the campaign and just kind of testing different creatives and just literally in you know, using your data from your digital marketing to help make those choices.
That's really interesting. And it leads neatly on to another question, which is about, have you got any tips for testing what would motivate people thinking about the COM-B model and your audience? And I think that's somewhat similar to a question which I'll tag on to the end, because I think the interesting thing for something like this is where you're doing the behavioural science and where you're kind of running it as a comms campaign, and I suppose how you bring the behavioural science to testing different things, because it's not a randomized control trial, it's a kind of putting it out there as a comms campaign and seeing what lands. So I suppose if there's any tips about how you can make that more scientific is something I'd be quite interested in as well. And the answer might not be there's not a solution, but I just wanted to ask the question.
What do you think, Elin?
Well, I think we can share with you after this, Dominic. So when we ran this deck past our behavioural insights team, just to make sure we've got all the science right, they did flag that there is a blog they've recently published, especially around green measures, energy saving, environmental things, and how to motivate people. So I'll share that. It's really interesting read. It uses the EAST model, I believe, to understand how to get people to get motivated, because people are seeing so much content around this that they either don't know what to do, so they're not taking any action, or they're getting apathetic. But yeah, there are probably some key findings in that might be useful.
Because I think, yeah, I was going to say it's interesting. I think with this, there's certainly a question mark. I suppose there's the kind of attitudes that people have. Yes, actually to take action, what you've clearly demonstrated is you need one very specific call to action. So I suppose how much you focus on attitudes and how much you focus on a barrier around ease is quite an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is it's kind of both, isn't it, really? We were certainly lucky, I guess, in that with this campaign, there was one very, very clear call to action, and it was very simple. And often campaigns are broader or they're more attitudinal and they're kind of more difficult to manage, to track. But I guess we had a kind of very clear outcome we wanted at the end, which was people turning down their boilers, and we had a very good new metric of how people had actually gone down the 8 steps. So that really helped us in kind of understanding what was working and what wasn't.
And do you think that's why it's been so successful? Because it was such a kind of simple call to action rather than anything complex?
I think that, and I think also the timely. So, thinking about the Tea of the East, I'm sure we all remember last autumn, and you couldn't really kind of move for media coverage or people just talking about worries about energy bills. So I think the timeliness of the campaign was absolutely key, in that we happened to be running it at a point where people were really thinking and getting very concerned about their energy bills. So really any kind of easy to follow and simple action was going to land well in that context, I think.
Okay, that's great. And then I've got a question here just about partnership. About the comment is that it seems that it's crucial to get partners on board. So how do you go about that? And is one of the first things you do to get buy-in to supporting the campaign?
So it's evidence with all of them. So if you look at the campaign partners we had, people like Which, they do not take things on lightly when they recommend it to their consumers. And it was up until I think even like the day of launch where some of our partners were not confirmed because they were still looking at the evidence. It took a lot of meetings, a lot of explanation of the data. We pulled together a partner deck so that we could talk them through the science in layman's terms and reassure them that it was robust. And it was a combination of that, and then a combination of the fact that we provided all of the content they would need. So we didn't ask them to do anything rather than just take what we've given them in the media packs and put it on their channels. So we made life easy for them. We gave them everything they needed to make sure that it was a credible piece of research, and we kept in touch throughout. So we kept them in the loop on how the campaign was going, great stats from their channels. We gave them that warm and friendly feeling. So even today, I've contacted some of the partners about something completely different, but we've managed to build relationships because we've kept them feeling loved. So when they're on board, they are fantastic, but it is a huge amount of resource building those relationships. It was probably a full-time job in the 2 weeks before the campaign, was just getting them happy. So don't underestimate that if you haven't done it before.
And I would also add, I think what we found was it takes a lot of time before you want to launch the campaign. So there's kind of no point trying to contact with a partner like a week before and saying, will you support us? The Elin and the team were having conversations with these potential partners probably at least 6 months in advance. Didn't have all the research at that point, didn't really know much about the campaign, but we're sort of trying to bring them along the journey. And I think that kind of like slow burn is the key, really, because these big brands don't kind of support these type of actions easily, and they need to be really warmed up over quite a long period. So it makes better difference, but not to underestimate the amount of energy and effort and sustained effort it takes.
Can imagine. You'll be glad to know it looks like there's lots of people interested in the campaign here. So I've got a comment from Natalie is asking about, will you be rolling out the campaign further? It'd be fantastic campaign for Blackburn and Darwin and other local authorities. So just clearly some interest in adapting it for organisations on the call. So if that's, and I'm just gonna pop between chat and Q&A to see if there's anything else at all. But did you want to share any thoughts on that at all?
So we won't put any more money into the campaign as a paid for campaign for this winter. However, we've updated the media pack, and website's still running, the tool is still there. We're really encouraging stakeholders and partners to point to it. We have adjusted the savings, which will be updating on the 25th of September, based on the energy prices, and also based on use of gas has come down. in the last year. So the price has been updated. It's lower than it was last autumn, but it's still a really good message. So we will, if I share with you, Dominic, after this, the media pack for stakeholders.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, absolutely, feel free to use it as your own tool and point to it from your channels. That'd be great.
No, that'd be great. And if there's anything else that you're working on that will be of interest to anyone in the virtual room, feel free to share. So I think that's all the questions that I think we've covered everything. So do quickly, if there's any other comments or questions, do get them in quickly. Otherwise, I think we're going to say thank you very much to Ella and to Elin. I could carry on talking to you all afternoon, but I'm going to say thank you very much for your time. It's been a really, really interesting webinar. It will be recorded and we will share all the details. So thank you very much for giving up your lunchtime, and I hope to see you at another webinar soon. Thank you.